Hi Moglets, and welcome to the Genshin Impact version 4.7 special program. Actually quite a few interesting things to talk about this time, including 3 new heroes. It's been so long since they've released 3 new heroes in one patch as far as I remember. We of course have Clorinde. I know she's pretty highly anticipated amongst the community. We also have Sethos here though, a new bow user. And finally Sigewinne, we've seen her quite a bit during one of the parts of the Fontaine Archon quest, and she'll actually be the second 5-star of 4.7. We have been basically watching the trailer here, and while it is cool as always, there is something I want to point out, something that is pretty exciting to me, honestly. It seems like the overall story is finally going to progress a bit with, you know, both travelers actually meeting face to face at one point. Obviously, I have no idea what's actually going to come from that right now, but yes, finally we are going to get some progress on like the overall story. But yeah, with all that, let's go ahead and jump into the new characters, starting with Clorinde. Basic information is that she's an electro sword user. Basic attack on its own is pretty basic, it's just physical damage. Her elemental skills where things get really interesting. It is actually a transformative elemental skill like Yoimiya and Hu Tao's. Her normal attacks will actually have some range and be infused with electro. As she does these normal attacks, she will get a bond of life. Using her elemental skill then clears that bond of life. Depending on the amount of bond of life she currently has, her attacks will be stronger or weaker. Her normal attack will be stronger the less bond of life she has, and can actually pierce enemies if it's low enough. And then her elemental skill, the thing that also clears the bond of life, will become stronger the more bond of life she has, and with a bigger AoE. It might just sound a little confusing, but you know, to best utilize this, you can just watch this video that's currently playing. She's basically doing a series of normal attacks and then doing her elemental skill, so she has the most powerful versions of all of them. Interestingly, one of her passives actually takes the healing she would receive from other allies and turns it into more bond of life. So literally the opposite of what should happen. But yeah, if you have a pretty good off-field healer that just heals over time, you could potentially speed up or just change this rotation of normal attack skill, or 3 normal attacks. Maybe it'll turn into 1 normal attack and then skill, you know? So I find that pretty interesting. Her burst seems relatively simple compared to the rest of her kit. It is basically an AoE electro attack that gives her a bigger bond of life that's based on her max HP. If anyone in your team triggers an electro reaction, Clorinde's normal attacks and burst will deal extra damage. She can also give herself crit rate depending on the amount of bond of life she has. It needs to be more than a certain amount. They don't specify, nor do they specify the amount of crit rate she gives herself, but she does give herself crit rate, which is very nice. It's a pretty rare self buff. She's also another good exploration character, revealing all the local specialties with her exploration ability. But yeah, that's Clorinde. I would imagine she could be pretty insane as the DPS in like a Chevreuse team overloaded, or just as a general DPS, of course. She actually does sound really fun with like the bond of life cycling, and maybe that new set will be worth farming finally. Next up, we have the other 5-star, the adorable Sigewinne. Basic information on her is that she's probably the cutest character in the game and also a Hydra bow user. Her basic attack shoots the enemy with arrows and also throws out pills. Take your medicine. Her charge attack is pretty interesting as well. You can just hold it indefinitely and it will fire these little water hearts. Her elemental skill is a giant water bubble that just bounces from one enemy to the next, dealing hydro damage. And every time it bounces, the entire party except for Sigewinne herself will be healed. She gets healed when the bubble finally expires. You can also hold her elemental skill to make the bubble bigger, do more damage, and heal more. Also, smaller, weaker enemies can actually get trapped inside, like what those damn hydro abyss mages do. Very strangely, she also makes Nouvelette source water droplets there when she does her elemental skill. She can just pick these up and it will give her a bond of life. Once the bond of life is cleared, she'll regain some energy based on the amount of bond of life she had. I'm really glad in the next clip they actually use Nouvelette to show him absorbing these source water droplets she creates, so he can use them. It is a little unfortunate she only creates 2 though. Maybe in a constellation she would create a 3rd one, we'll see. Moving on from that, one of her passives actually makes her healing scale with the bond of life of everyone in your team. So I guess she would be best paired with someone that uses Bond of Life. Currently, we really only have Arlecchino and soon Clorinde, of course. I'm not sure if it'll actually be necessary to have a Bond of Life unit in your team if you want to use her, but something to keep in mind, I guess. As far as I could gather from the information they provided, her burst is really only just damage, like continuous damage. So even though she does heal, she seems to be something in the middle of a sub DPS plus healer. Usually the burst of someone who heals would also heal or do something else, but I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. And then when other party members deal damage while they're off field with their elemental skill, she will gain a stack of convalescence. That is quite a mouthful, but like, I can't think of too many others besides the Furina they show here that do off-field elemental skill damage. I'm sure there are more, like Arlecchino herself should be able to technically do off-field damage because her little debuff thing that she plants on the enemies does damage and she can be off-field. But yeah, that stack of Convalescence will further increase her elemental skill damage. So yeah, she actually does seem to be leaning more towards DPS than support or healer. But yeah, that's Sigewinne. Definitely kind of a weird character first impressions and kit-wise, but I'm looking forward to trying her out. Next, we're taking a look at Sethos. Basic information takes a bit from the last two characters. He's an electro bow user. Even though he's a 4-star, he does have some interesting mechanics, starting with his charge shot here. Like other bow users, it can charge to a level 2 and then it will pierce enemies and do more damage, obviously. But what's interesting is that he can actually use his burst energy to speed up the process of charging. That's very unique. When it is charged to level 2 though, he can't move until you release it. So you need to make sure you're locked on before you get to that point so that you can release it as soon as possible and start moving again. Just watching the clips here, there's something I'm a bit confused about. There's like 3 different charging speeds. Like, I'm not sure if they actually slow down the footage or if this is how it normally is without using energy, but that is insanely slow. But then they show this one, which is much faster, definitely closer to a normal charge level 2. But then they show this one, which is basically instant. So either they slowed down the footage to kind of emphasize how slow his charge attack level 2 is, or there's some other mechanic, like maybe using even more energy to make it almost instant. His elemental skill basically gives him energy and does some damage. Obviously, most characters' elemental skills gives them energy, but I assume his will give him a little bit more. He only gets this extra energy though if the attack he does triggers an electro reaction. His ultimate is transformative. Once he does it, all of his normal attacks will be converted into these special charge level 2 attacks that pierce enemies. I'm not sure if they'll actually do the same damage, but they look very similar. The damage of these attacks actually does scale with his elemental mastery. So that's Sethos, pretty much a pure DPS as far as I can tell. I imagine he might be good in AoE situations if they're pretty close together, or maybe with like CC units like Venti that can bundle them all up and he can just pierce them straight away. As for the banners, we got Clorinde and Sethos first alongside I'll Hate Them. Don't really have any thoughts on this banner, honestly. I know a lot of people like I'll Hate Them. I'm obviously going to be going for Clorinde though. Next one though, kind of insane. We have Furina coming back alongside Sigewinne. Obviously, if you don't have Furina and you care anything about power and meta, then yeah, Furina's pretty much the best hero in the game. We of course will get new 5-star weapons for the new characters as well. The cast here in the special program allude to a surprise and then they're like, okay, here's the surprise. And they show us a short video, zero context before or after about what this is. My best guess is this is the trailer to the Genshin Impact anime they promised a long time ago. Or I shouldn't say promised, they teased it. That must have been like almost 2 years ago by now. Maybe it wasn't that long ago. I don't know. My sense of time when it comes to very specific things like that is not the best. But yeah, I mean, it looks really nice. It does have that like hand-drawn anime aesthetic. So I'm going to assume that's what they're alluding to here. Anyway, moving on to events, since we've already talked about it a lot, I'm going to keep this relatively quick as usual. First up, we got Imaginarium Theater. In a nutshell, it's a combat event, but the characters you can actually bring along with you are restricted. So they can only be a certain element for certain stages, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wait, hold on. Whoops. I actually missed this the first time watching this. Imaginarium Theater is going to be permanent content, and it'll be apparently alternating updates with the Abyss. Okay, this is bigger than I thought it was. Introducing permanent content is something Genshin rarely does, so yeah, definitely caught me off guard. They've also increased the amount of Primo Gems we can get from Abyss from 600 to 800, which is pretty cool. Nice little bump there. But yeah, we will of course be diving into that when it's actually here. Next up for events, we got Mutual Security. I think this is actually the main event of 4.7. We will get a new 4-star event bow, you know, a crown over there. So yeah, this event is pretty interesting, I guess. You set up enemies to fight other enemies, you set the position, and you yourself, I guess, can't do much. You just have to watch your enemies fight the other enemies. It is pretty similar to like the tower defense game we've had a few times. Next event, Endless Forms. Essentially another combat event with special rules and buffs. Next, we got Double Blaster. We already know this. Do I need to even say anything? I do like these though. They're like the little mini games where you shoot stuff. I explained it anyway, but you can see what's happening. Next, we got Record of Reflective Writing. Sort of a combination of jump and run, coin collecting, and avoiding traps and stuff. So we've also seen stuff like this before, not much to say about it. New stuff for Genius Invocation TCG. And finally, we're going to be looking at system optimizations. This is generally like one of the more exciting things for me, honestly, and we do have a couple of interesting ones to talk about. For newer players, they are reducing the AR requirement for the Adventure Encounter system. Probably the biggest news is they are finally increasing the resin cap from 160 to 200. So as it is just increasing the resin cap, It's cool. It's kind of a little quality of life thing. It's nice. What they should actually do next is slightly, it doesn't have to be much, slightly decrease the time it takes per resin. Right now it's 8 minutes, which means we need 26.6 hours to get 200 resin. It would actually be basically perfect if they reduced it to 7 minutes per resin, because then 200 takes 23.3 hours. So you could log on once a day, pretty much at the same time with about 40 minutes of wiggle room from yesterday, make all 5 condensed resin, because with a cap of 200, you can do that now. And yeah, I just think that would flow a lot better for everyone. How it currently is, you could still just log on once a day, but you won't have the 200 resin and you can't just make the 5 condensed and go on your way. I don't know. I really do think that'd be a smart thing for them to do. Just make it a bit nicer for everyone. There are also a few other optimizations here they didn't really talk about. They just showed a couple of 1-second clips. Our friends cap will be getting increased, and the auto equip artifact stuff will be getting a little better as well. They'll add the fast fill function for recommended stats in the custom configurations of fast equip artifacts. So you won't need to like manually input all of them all the time anymore. There's also a little clip here at the end, completely contextless, but I'm assuming it's a teaser for a future version. The map looks completely different. The gameplay looks completely different. I know we will be getting version 5 soon, which usually comes with a big new map. As someone who doesn't follow leaks, I did kind of forget the name here, but I'm going to guess right now this is what they're teasing. But yeah, besides that, that's pretty much the entire version 4.7 special program. The new characters do look pretty interesting. It's also pretty insane. They're actually introducing a new permanent mode. I hope I'm not actually misunderstanding that as well. But yeah, all in all, pretty solid special program here. But let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. Dropping a like or subscribing to the channel if you enjoy is always greatly appreciated as well. Thanks, as always, for watching, and until next time.